What's up, losers? Today I'm going to look at some more posts from r/fatlogic. Because these videos seem to be doing better than my other ones. Understandable, really. Who doesn't enjoy being told how fatphobic they are? Anyway, let's get right into the posts.
People are calling out ways folks body shame others without even realizing it, and it's a must-read. It's so toxic when someone obviously smaller than you constantly complains about being fat.
Okay, so, on the one hand, I do agree that it can be annoying when people constantly complain about their perceived flaws, especially when those are flaws that you also have, and might have even worse than they do. But I also think that, being realistic, this is something that people need to learn to accommodate. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be someone who has it worse. Someone who is fatter, someone who is shorter, someone whose acne is worse. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be allowed to voice insecurities or vent. I think there needs to be a little give and take here. Yes, try to be more considerate of how your words might hurt others. But also, fat people, don't assume that everything is about you, and that people who are calling themselves fat are fat shaming you, because it's probably not that deep.
Unless we see fatphobia as a real form of oppression, we will never combat it. Fatphobia is not simply making fun of fat people, although that perpetuates it. Fatphobia is violence. It is being dehumanized. It's not being taken seriously by doctors. It costs lives.
I'm pretty sure what actually costs lives is obesity, haha. And don't worry, doctors do take obesity seriously. Whether you choose to listen to their advice in that regard is your prerogative, I suppose. As for violence committed against fat people, and serious attempts to dehumanize them, needless to say those are reprehensible. But if we're being honest, most of the issues that fat acceptance focuses on are much more frivolous. So if anyone has diluted the meaning of the word fatphobia, it's not the FA skeptics. It's fat activists themselves.
I am fat. That's a physical health issue I have to address. You're skinny. That's an emotional issue you have to address.
Wow, an admission that fatness is a physical health issue. I am going to take that as a win. As for skinniness being an emotional issue, yeah, not really. Some skinny people might be suffering from eating disorders or emotional problems, but many aren't. So, please don't assume. Okay, thanks.
Maybe it's just because I've been studying it specifically, but I'm hard-pressed to think of a system of social control as thoroughly disguised and effective as dietary reform. Dietary reform is never-ending, always switching back on itself, shifting its focus, expanding its purview, further and deeper into the lives of American citizens. I use that phrase intentionally, as eating right is promoted as an act of responsible citizenship. Talk about a self-regulating population. Like people believe that religious adherence to the rules in each new phase of dietary reform is their main means of staving off an untimely death of themselves, their dignity, of the nation, of the earth, etc. People risk their lives to toe this ever-shifting line. They become their own unrelenting taskmasters. This is not to say that there's not truth to any of the dietary narratives, particularly about the risks to the planet of industrial agriculture. But the narratives morph in whatever ways best serve capital and the state, for whom sustainability is of little importance. If we're to find ways of eating that are truly healthy for humans and for the earth, they will be utterly outside of institutionalized norms, including, and especially, diet culture, and they will threaten, rather than lend themselves to easy assimilation into existing systems of power.
Haha, they really managed to make diet culture sound like the Illuminati. Or ancient aliens or something. Next thing you know they'll be blaming diet culture for the assassination of JFK, but seriously. The idea that healthy eating is important for a healthy and dignified life, and that countries benefit from having a healthy populace, is not some grand mind control conspiracy. It's just common sense. If anything, it's the food industry that holds the real institutional power to shape public behavior. Packing the shelves with calorie-dense, highly processed, and nutritionally useless food, all while doing their best to obscure the consequences of consuming said food. Even as millions become obese, the diet industry might have its problems. But when compared to the damage being wrought by the food industry, it's not even close.
Overeating is the result of prior starvation, or the threat of starvation to come. Overeating is a protective behavior.
No. Overeating is the result of food addiction and complacency, and living amidst a hyperabundance of ultra-palatable food that is deliberately engineered to get you hooked and keep you eating beyond the point at which you would be wise to stop. Of course, some people might feel that eating is a protective behavior in an emotional sense. But these people have an unhealthy relationship with food, and should seek psychological help before these habits wreak havoc on their physical and mental health.
There's this stereotype that fat people can't exercise because of our fatness, and I want to address this. There are definitely fat people who are active and fit, but there are also, indeed, many fat people who don't fall into that category. The thing, though, is that it's not fatness keeping us from exercising. It's being judged and watched at the gym, having our abilities assumed by our size, not being able to find swimsuits, or jogging attire, or sports equipment that fit, because people literally do not include us into the equation. Workout equipment is not made with our bodies in mind. Children being turned away from sports teams, or clubs, because they are fat. Things that actually happen, not even being given the chance to play. Being bullied and abused by strangers as you do something as common as walk in the park. People assuming you're exercising for the purpose of weight loss, because you hate yourself. Never being represented ever in anything sports/exercise related. Being told you'll look ugly with your flab bouncing and moving about. Not having the time, energy, or resources to exercise because you're poor. Many poor people are fat and work 3 jobs. Being shamed from ever even leaving your house. Not being welcome in active communities. How steeped in diet culture said active communities usually are. Being told our whole lives that fat people cannot exercise for pleasure, but must exercise to repent for the sin of being fat, and all the other fat phobia that causes people to be shamed, ridiculed, and gate-kept out of being active. If it weren't for fat phobia and the abuse of fat people, there would be just as many active fat people as there are active thin people. So the next time you inwardly shame a fat person for not exercising enough to your liking, think about all the privileges that they don't have, and how much that fat person has to work through just to be allowed to start the race.
This post is great because it unintentionally proves that this person really hasn't tried to live a more active lifestyle. Because the things that they describe just don't happen, at least, not with any sort of regularity. I've played in sports teams with plenty of fat people. Nobody was turned away for their size, or made to feel unwelcome. I've gone to multiple gyms, and never seen any fat people being insulted or humiliated. I've been for many walks in the park, and never come across any fat people being abused. And as for things like clothing sizes, and having to work, those are ultimately just excuses. Lots of people have to work a lot, but still manage to exercise. Lots of people don't have fancy gym gear, but still manage to work out. If it were really that important to you, you would find a way to make it work. Finally, I think it's telling that this person complains about thin people, inwardly shaming fat people. It gives away the game a bit, doesn't it? Because you can't actually inwardly shame someone. It's not a thing. What that wording suggests to me is that most of the so-called abuse that these fat people claim to experience is not actually coming from thin people. It exists only in the minds of insecure fat people. They feel bad about themselves, so they project their self-hatred onto the people around them. So, no, that skinny girl at the gym isn't actually staring at you. She's just minding her own business. doing her workout, and if you manage to take issue with people who aren't saying or doing anything to you, then sorry, that's a you problem. Well, that's all I've got today. What do you guys think? Am I not giving enough credit to the grand diet culture conspiracy theory? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll follow you to the gym, just to laugh at your bouncing flap. Ha ha. Anyway, catch you later.